So we're now on to the last session, and we're going to ask some of the speakers to come join me on the podium. And as they're doing it, I'll remind everybody what we've done over the last couple of days. Not everybody's been in every session, just to get an idea. Obviously, there was the Women's Forum, and if you could come and join me, please, on the stage when you're ready with your mics. And Francie was going to represent views on the whole conference, but also she was part of the Women's Forum, so we thought that would be a nice addition. If you run through the program, we said we were trying to cover a lot of different issues, and we were trying to do it in a different kind of way, stealing some ideas from Ted. So we had Chris Meyer at the end, who was talking about choices facing capitalism, and one of the equations was just quoted, which was interesting. Caroline Miles is the CEO of Save the Children, talking about the business of doing good, not in fact asking for money, but more how can you blend the value from different ways of helping, also by doing good things for the companies concerned. Jez Frampton talked about ethical choices for the brand, how brands need to change to become more sustainable and ethical. I was volunteered to talk about big data and actually the consumer ownership of their own data and how it's all becoming both structured and non-structured, tiny data and big data in an unstructured way, and what that means for people. We have some of the other guys come back here. Mikhail talked about mobile innovations. John from CERN talked about 2 or 3 different things, actually, besides saying we shouldn't be scared about the Hadron Collider. It was all about how do you get scientists from 134 countries to communicate, and by so doing accidentally invent the World Wide Web, and then accidentally find, not accidentally, but with a lot of hard work, find what looks like a real new piece of the jigsaw puzzle for physics and the Higgs boson. Martin Ingvar got everybody excited about sleeping better and did a test which until you actually blink and close your eyes, you don't know whether it's a B or a D, which I don't think I'll ever forget. Who have I missed? And actually Richard has been a big part of our White Cube program, and we thought Richard might actually help us a little bit on this as well. So I don't think I've missed any of the main speakers. So I'd like to start really by asking you in turn what you have got out of this, what's either surprised you, what you disagree with, what you found interesting. And then we'll invite questions or comments from the audience. And those questions or comments could be about what's just been said, or even to ask Martin yet more questions about sleeping better. That's okay too. So, Chris, do you want to start on this? What have you learned? What was surprising? What's new?
Well, that's a list, but I assume you'd like one.
I would like one, yes.
Yeah, all right. Well, maybe on the subject of is marketing dead or is it the same but different? I was thinking 20 years ago, Seth Godin, who maybe some of you have read, talked about permission marketing, and that in the age of, it was not yet social media, but the net, we took control over our information, and people, we would only receive messages from marketers for which we had given permission in some explicit or tacit way. And I'm thinking it doesn't feel that way at all. That listening to Jez and Kevin and others, some things have changed, but the interruption has not. The asking for permission is not really prevalent. And the net, companies still have the passion for making brand important to each of us as consumers, and that pushes more information at us, and that it's only going to get worse as mobile commerce becomes a source of advertising revenue. And big data makes it worse because as the messages get more targeted and therefore cheaper to deliver a useful impression, that gives you more incentive to make more impressions on that person. And social media, wow, you have a new follower on a new follower on Twitter. It turns out it's, Duracell, and you're going to get messages from your battery every day or two. Is that what people really want from their social media? So I think I feel that this idea of permission marketing made a lot of sense to a lot of people at the time, but it doesn't seem to be happening. We have more media, it's going the other way. So I wonder then, are we going to have some kind of backlash? Are the tools for controlling the messages that individuals see going to gain power, and will there just be this arms race, and is that good for anybody?
We'll maybe come back and ask some questions on that in a minute, but Richard.
I could do what I usually do. One of my roles is to follow Kevin. It reminds me often of working at the circus. There's the elephant, and then there's the elephant sweeper, the guy who goes behind the elephant. And that's not to say Kevin looks like an elephant or is an elephant, but marketing is dead. I will tell you that's a provocation. That's an aspiration for brands these days. And Love Marks is what I take around the world. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of P&G people around the world on that. What I wanted to say by way of observation, actually, is more rooted in what this reunion experience has felt like to an outsider. My only reference point to reunions is London Business School, where I'm the faculty representative of the international alumni community there, 40,000 of us in London Business School. And I think there are 4 things you look for from a great reunion. One is that it is a truly global experience, if indeed it's a reunion for a global institution, and that there is real diversity and a genuine feeling of global and a genuine kind of reflection of the organization itself. And I felt that very much and very deeply. The second is that the participants actually get some huge stimulus and provocation. So it's not just welcome, have a good time, and you do all the work. And I think the stimulus and provocation from these guys here and others has been absolutely outstanding. I was at London Business School's reunion last week, and I tell you, this ranks right up there. So I think that's great. The third thing is that whatever learning there is, by definition, has to have not just professional application, which clearly the provocations have thus far, but also personal. This is a very personal investment of your time. If Kevin were here, he would say you should be judging this based on return on involvement, not just return on investment. And I would imagine that you feel you've had plenty of opportunity to get return on involvement. But the fourth thing, and I think it must be remembered, and I think Samir actually kind of raised this, is that a reunion is only as good as the assertive participation and active participation of those who come. And I think you were a little bit coy when you came to feedback on the White Cube, because if the protagonist White Cube was anything to go by, let me tell you on behalf of me and Annie and Jess, who ran it for Saatchi, our protagonist White Cube was unbelievably energetic. We couldn't believe how quickly you got down to task and decided that you were going to do something related to P&G's corporate commitment to improve lives. It was incredible how quickly you got down to it. There are still some great ideas to be aired, and we'd be happy after this to come and collect them to make sure they get fed back and acted on. But I think all in all, it's felt like a very high-tempo, intense, productive use of people's time.
Fantastic. So, Martin, what else do we do wrong besides not sleeping? More importantly, what do you think you got from this conference? What have you learned?
Well, the idea that marketing is dead is, of course, an exaggeration in my mind. Marketing will change like a chameleon to something else. I mean, market presence has to be different. When over 50% of TV watching today for kids in Sweden is off the television set in individual channels. When market penetration for like over the course of 4 years go to 80% for some of these different these different social media, the big elephants comes trailing along and say, well, we have to be available in the social media field. And it reminds me when I was 11 and we had a party in my class, and my mother came in and said, you should listen to this music instead. It wasn't very popular. So to me, the market presence in social media is a very sensitive matter, because once the market presence comes up, it goes down with the media channel as such. I mean, we're seeing that happening to Facebook now, and I dare you, Twitter is going to follow right along. The kids won't take it.
There we go. We just predicted the demise of Facebook and Twitter, as well as killing off marketing. We're doing really well. I'm just hoping that John isn't going to tell us that actually he wasn't right and we could all disappear in a black hole. So John, what have you taken out of this gathering, please?
Well, obviously, you guys are associated with a very different sort of business from what I'm involved with.
Just a little bit.
So perhaps for me, that's what makes it particularly interesting to sort of dip my toes in this sort of gathering from time to time. But there are some things that resonate with my own experience. I mean, you talk about purpose, you talk about passion, you talk about common goals. This is, of course, what drives CERN. This is what is driving the ability that we have to bring together this international community to actually make some scientific progress. Dimitri was talking a lot about change and globalization. This is something that we've also had to deal with. The name CERN, the E stands for Europe, and as you saw from my map, we're definitely outside Europe now. We've got countries from, I think, all the continents on the planet, except Antarctica, they're planning to join us. One thing which I didn't explicitly mention, you talk about improving lives. I mean, there's a whole aspect that I didn't get time to talk about. We are, for example, active in the medical field, trying to use our technologies, particle accelerators, particle detectors in the medical field. I'd be happy to talk more about that. This guy, Perez, seems to be around everywhere. So we heard about this long discussion with Perez. Actually, we had Shimon Peres at CERN a couple of years ago, and he was by far and away the most interesting politician that we've had. And he made a remark which I'm still thinking about. He said basically the nation state is dead. He said the nation state evolved in order to be able to put together resources to build up a military to defend territory. And he said that's not the way the world works anymore. It sounds strange coming from an Israeli president, but anyway. But I think in our own different ways, your organization, our organization, are in the same place on this. We are international, we're global, and we have to try to build something which people from many different cultures and backgrounds can relate to it and see value in. The last comment that I would make is that we at CERN really need to build up an alumni organization, which amazingly we just don't have.
Interesting. So I've just learned that Shimon Peres is more interesting than Margaret Thatcher, which I guess I probably already knew. Thank you, John. So, Francie, your reflection really on what you've taken from the whole event, not any particular part, but how you feel about the whole event.
Am I on?
Yes, you're on.
I know you all expect to see John up here. I'm not sure why I'm here. But I'm not in the business world except via John and my children. But I'm obviously in the nonprofit world, and my passion and hopefully imparted some of that to some of you. What I learned was frankly I liked the Women's Forum. I learned a lot there in terms of what is happening with advertising, so on and so forth. But Martin, your comments really resonated with me, and I mentioned on Thursday night an organization that about the brain and how a book about the brain and children and synapses that don't connect when children run into violence in their homes or violence in the countries. And I was thinking about all the children in the war zones and how their synapses are not going to come together. And what you said really brought all that to the top of my head. What John did with a book that I gave him years ago was about the brain, and I took a course on the brain once, was start something called Every Child Succeeds, which I mentioned on Thursday, where people go in and help pregnant mothers learn how to react with their pregnancy and with their children through age 3. And then if you add that to nutrition, and I'm thinking about the third world countries that we're hearing about and the developing, and that worries me a lot because they're not getting the nutrition while they're living with the violence. And I think that's very worrisome, and I don't know how to suggest that anybody do anything, but I'm with the YWCA, and the World YWCA is here. You see their information out in the hall. And Dimitri, you and I are going to have a little discussion about water and connecting with the YWCA around in Africa and around the world, because that is a really good place to save lives with children. And the YWCA and the women in the YWCA, I think, can really help with that. They were connected up in Nigeria at one time. I think it was Nigeria. Was it Nigeria? It was Nigeria, right? So that was my big takeaway as a non-P&G alum, except by marriage and history. And I just think that was really, for me, one of the most important things. But the other thing I'd say is I love technology. I was an early adapter. I've been on the computer for 25 years. I was early. I bought Apple at 5. My basis price for Apple stock is 5.
Wow.
So I've been an early adapter to all of that, and I love that, all that history of the internet and what you were talking about with the World YWC or the World Net. And I do think that we use it too much, and I need more sleep. I could say one more thing. I use it, Facebook and Twitter, and I use it for political purposes. People don't like me very much because I put up my ideas and put a lot of political stuff out, because I think that's really important in this world too, to put your views out there and take whatever crap anybody wants to give you because of it.
And now you know why Francie was on the stage. Thanks, everybody. That was fantastic. So, open up to the floor, really. Two kinds of questions. Do you have any observations on what you've learnt in the last couple of days? Or do you have any specific questions for any of the panelists? Either are possible. There's one down here, please.
Yeah, an observation. First, I'm a guest. And Nancy, when she invited me to come with her to this, I had no idea how fortunate it would be for me to have the privilege of getting to know all of you. What a great group you have. Secondly, Professor Ellis and I were talking after the meeting, and he touched on this a little bit, but I'd ask him a question. I thought maybe some of you would appreciate an answer, the same answer he gave me. And my question was, based on his knowledge of CERN and his working there, in his dreams, not everything, but what would be one of the major accomplishments, or maybe two, that he would hope CERN could accomplish in our lifetime through their technology?
Well, I think it's intrinsic that any discovery that we make, eventually turns out to be useful for something, although it may take a long time for this to filter through. And I mentioned casually in my presentation that antimatter was discovered in cosmic rays. I don't know how many people know that antimatter is now routinely used in medical diagnosis. But this is something that's happened 80 years after the discovery, or CERN was involved in it something like 30 years ago. So 50 years is a reasonable time to expect things to filter through into everyday life. So at CERN at the moment, I think we're trying to accelerate this process, in particular in the medical field, as I just briefly mentioned. And back in the 90s, we came up with a design for a relatively simple accelerator that could be used for medical therapy, cancer therapy. And now we're trying to work on the next generation of that. We also have a program that we're developing for testing the effects of radiation on biological materials using CERN accelerators. So this is something where I hope we can have an immediate impact within the foreseeable future.
And we think long term is the next couple of years or the next quarter, 50 years. That's quite impressive. Any other questions, please? One down here.
My name is Nyara Zai. I'm a guest. I just want to say I'm going back feeling grounded and feeling hopeful for the future in many ways. First is the notion, the groundedness of the issue of social innovation. Because as you spoke of social innovation, it connected to me of the realities within our communities, especially in poor rural communities where the YWCA movement is, and the opportunity to connect business with social community innovation to go to scale for long-term change. Second was the conversation around shared values. The notion of shared values for me was very deep in terms of why are we in this anyway, whether from the business side, from us in social justice work, from those who are in politics. The issue of shared values was very deep. Also just looking at me and my colleague Luna Lee, who is in the room, of coming from deep communities of exclusion and finding opportunities through education, through connectedness, and through business. And I feel that concept is powerful. And lastly, it's around technology and the opportunities. My country has just started to do the cash transfer through mobile telephony. And what is very clear, very, very clear, is that it is possible to bridge the social divide through technology and to give hope, possibility, chance, and unleash the potential, even on those who are on the west side of our society, for the best within each of one of them to come to life. And lastly, I stand here saying another world is possible, another world of creating opportunities for all, and a world of connecting the social movement, community groups like YWCA with business. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions?
Perhaps I could.
Oh, sorry, please. We have two.
I resonate very much with what you said. In fact, one of my little hobbies is this not working?
Yeah, it is now.
Okay. One of my hobbies actually is a small not-for-profit Swiss foundation called Sharing Knowledge, where we precisely try to bridge the gap across the Mediterranean and beyond. And I think that many of the things that you mentioned and other people here have discussed is something that we should incorporate into our agenda. So thank you for that.
I think you were going to say something, Martin.
I resonate to the ideas also of a better world. But the day before I flew here, my son showed me a new app. A new app whereby whenever he buys something, he just scans the barcode before he makes the purchase, and he gets information: where is the raw material from, who is taking care of it, what's the carbon footprint of this one, and you got all the both social values, ecological values, and etc. for every product, and that's now crowdsourced to the point, and it's spreading like wildfire. So the idea that sort of capitalism has to be reinvented and be true all the way through the chain of production, transport, selling, and marketing is really something that's coming on, because the eyes are going to be on us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? One over there.
This is for Dr. Ellis. I was tremendously impressed with the pictures that you showed of the collider. It kind of existed in my mind as a little circle. I didn't realize it was 27 kilometers around and that an enormous tunnel like that. And I spoke to you very briefly, and I thought some of the other folks might be interested in your answer. How do you maintain that thing? I mean, who greases and oils it? If you have to upgrade it because you have a new concept or a new idea, how do you figure out how to do it? How long is the equipment going to run, and what are you going to do with it when it's finished? Are you going to sell souvenirs in Geneva? Thank you.
Okay, well, a whole bunch of questions there. So typically we run the collider for periods of like 3 years at a time. And during that 3-year period, every month there's a shutdown for a day or two just to fix little things. At the end of each year, we shut down maybe for a couple of months to do sort of longer term maintenance. And then we have a longer shutdown every 3 years where we sort of upgrade for the next step. So for example, what we're doing at the moment is the machine is shut down and we're upgrading so that we can increase the energy by almost a factor of 2. And Now, I hope this is going to give us another new particle that maybe we can present at the next alumni meeting.
Hopefully not in 50 years, though.
So I think that we foresee a future for this machine for at least another 10, probably 20 years. What we do after that, I don't know. There's a big discussion taking place now in the physics community. Okay, we've discovered this new particle. Is this all there is, or is there something else? How can we understand better the way that the universe works? And this is an ongoing debate at the moment. As to what we're going to do with the collider once we're through, we were actually approached a couple of years ago by a Swiss watch company. I think it's the same company that makes watches with little pieces of the Titanic in it. And so maybe we can sell the LHC to that Swiss watch company, and everybody can wear an LHC watch in, let's say, 20 years' time.
So it would seem to me that capitalism is alive and well in CERN. That's terrific. Any more questions, comments from the audience? I can't see any, I'm sorry, it's a bit bright. No? I think we're just done. So we can probably do one final thing. I was going to ask each of you now for a short final comment, if you have such a comment, based on what's been said, or any other things you'd like to get off your chest. One small, short comment. Chris.
So maybe as a balance to what I said about interruption marketing getting worse, I think paradoxically, and this is a comment about U.S. culture. U.S. culture has been negative about emotion, particularly emotion as part of work, historically. The trend, whether it's partly by bringing social value into the purview of business, it's partly bringing passion into advertising and marketing messages, is that emotion is more visible to us, albeit in commercial settings. I think paradoxically, for me at least, commercial marketing may be bringing U.S. culture more alive than it has been by adding to the amount of emotion present for us every day.
Interesting. Richard.
Mine is a hope, and it's a provocative one, I think. There is enormous power and pride in the provenance of having been at P&G. You all wear the badge with a great deal of pride and honour, and rightly so. It's a world-class company. You also all, it seems to me and seems to us, have a big appetite to do stuff for the betterment of a more wonderful world. And whilst P&G currently, your former colleagues, are doing an okay job at putting sustainability at the core, I don't believe it's doing a world-class job, and you wear that badge. So my one hope is that if you were to do one thing leaving here, it would be to put more constructive pressure in helping those who are responsible for shining that badge on your behalf to put sustainability far more at the core of everything it does, because you can't speak your way to a good game about this. You have to play a great game.
I'm sure you might get questions on that later. Martin.
I was going to say the same thing.
No, that's cheap. That's cheap. That's not. You're not going to get away with that.
I'm serious. What I'm saying is that I will more reiterate what I said before. The idea of a closed company putting out goods is dead. All companies are going to be open. I mean, even Swiss banks are open these days. Which goes to show that if you want to tell the world that you're a good company, you have to be a good company. Otherwise, there's going to be a discrepancy, and it's going to cost dollars.
I think that's well said too. John?
So I like to, if I may, pick up on something that Dimitri said and something that Kevin said.
Of course.
So with regard to Dimitri, one thing I learnt, somewhat off colour, I apologise, is a parallelism between black holes and diaper rash. In the sense that
I'm just wondering whether we should actually try to blink our eyes or how we should deal with that conundrum.
In the sense that the wonderful World Wide Web is a dangerous world as well as being an opportunity. And the thing which I want to pick up from what Kevin said is very simple: education, education, education.
Fantastic. And Fran? Francie, any final thoughts?
Well, I look at this large group, and whenever I see a very large group, I think of the power of that group and what they can do, whether it's in business or it's in nonprofit work or both. I see that power, and of course I'm sitting up here, and you all are brilliant because you're at Procter & Gamble at one time or another, and I wasn't there. So, but I see the hope, I see the possibilities. And I just hope the big ideas that came out of this meeting can somehow prove fruitful to do much more good than we're already trying to do. And that's what we can use the internet, we can use the power of the internet, we can learn from all the things that we've heard and do something, and maybe it'll be all of us together 50 years from now, or maybe some people in small groups can do something sooner. But we really do have to help the world and make it a better place. And I think with a group like this, there are all kinds of possibilities. That's what I always see when I come into a big group.
Thank
Powerful.
you, Francie. So I would just like to say thank you to the panel, and I think we should give all of them a round of applause. So if you'd like to leave the stage. And I get the privilege, actually, of closing the conference. Just as a practical matter, we still have the white cubes open for people that want to visit them. We're still selling T-shirts. We're selling gazettes. We have information about your likes and dislikes from the questionnaire, which groups you fit in. We have all of that information. There are lots of things to follow up on. I think Samir might be crowded with people having a conversation with them this evening, which is fantastic. If I remember, I need to double check, but cocktails are at 7 o'clock, although I suspect some will start before that. And then there will be a gala event, which is something you'll hear about more when we get there. So I think that I know actually, I've really enjoyed doing this. I think I've learned a lot myself. I hope you've learned a lot too. It's been a great privilege to try to put this together. The speakers I know to a person have truly enjoyed it, the ones that are still here and the ones that had to go. Everybody found this to be a fantastic group and got some great value out of it, both for them and for their organizations of many different kinds. I know that Caroline had to go off to Iraq. She would love to have conversations about what can and cannot be done. I realize a lot of things that have been said, marketing is dead, P&G is not as good as Unilever, etc., etc., etc. Most of those were made to provoke people. Most of them succeeded. But sometimes thinking more like that forces you to move the needle forward a bit more than just thinking, actually, we're doing okay, can we edge forward? The whole purpose of this was to try to put out there some new ideas, put a lot more out there that we wouldn't normally see, and take advantage of being in this beautiful city right next to CERN. So thank you all for your participation in this. Thank you for making it a great formal conference. I can see that Jose is telling me I've forgotten something. Yes. What have I forgotten? Cocktails are on the second floor. Right, an important detail. I have never been to a Procter & Gamble event of any description where people couldn't find the bar. So, this could be a first, but I don't think that's going to happen. So anyway, with that, cocktails on the second floor. Please go back to the white cubes. Please have more conversations. We are considering, for those of you who are interested, how to make some of the materials available. Now she's going to tell me something else. What have I done wrong now? I didn't need to. The dinner is here. I know that. So does everybody else. The dinner is here. Of course, if you're in the bar and 400 people start to leave, going somewhere, you'll probably figure out where they're going, right? And I presume that's here for the dinner. Is that right, Jose? Thank you. Jeez. I should go back to school. Anyway, as I said, it's been a great privilege trying to be part of the team that's put that together. And I think, if you don't mind, I'd really like to personally thank Jose and the team, Bill that can't be here, Linda, I'd also like to thank our sponsors, who I think have not only been very generous, but have been very good about about making things good and having conversations, not having corporate commercials. I think our sponsors have actually been fantastic, everyone, and I think they deserve a round of applause too. And I've got one request as you walk out of this room. I'd like you to follow something that Samir asked us to do. Before you leave this room, I'd like you to actually go find somebody that you haven't spoken to and say hi. And that is the end of the conference. Thank you.